Hello, this is Arcosm, A-R-C-O-S-M. This is Circles of the Arc YouTube channel, and this is your host, Randall Prosser, and guest host, Miles. We're going to be getting into an interesting one this time. Based on our last podcast, when we were going into the immense intricacies and manifold structure of the fractal nature of the species and races and how it multiplies based on a foundational structure, or the angelic Enochian language of the 117,649 letters of light and permutations of being, I was going to go into a little caveat, that one might have picked up in the last podcast, and I'm going to clarify something and go a little bit deeper into quantum physics. So, hi Miles, how are you this time?
I'm doing great, ready to dive into this. Quantum physics usually has a way of making things feel even wilder than they already are.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really a fascinating one. The little caveat that I kind of wanted to go over is when in the last podcast, you'll notice that I mentioned the permutations of the species and races ends up being way more than the atomic, structure of the universe and the amount of atoms in the universe. And in a logical sense, that just can't be so, because how could there be more permutations of genomic expressions than the atoms that make up the genes of the species and races inside that universe? Well, the reason is, and it's not illogical, what happens is there's infinite infinities of universes, and they kind of bleed through each other, and each universe has a different combination of mixtures of all the permutations that could play out. And this was just showing the immensity of the amount of permutations that could be playing out in any one universe. But in all actuality, that's like the quantum potentiality between the infinite infinities of universal firmaments. Well, what actually happens when it limits its light and expands out within a universal firmament, or a golden cherub out of the cherubim within a galaxy, and it contracts and expands out of the seraphim of galaxies into a particularized seraph, and then into a particularized star out of the star systems within a galaxy of an archangel, and then the heavenly earthen stations of angels that make up the system of the star, and then the genomic expressions of species and races. It limits its potential and expands it out through a base structure, and then it could even be more limited than that. Even though there could be 117,649 possible permutations in any one of the 7 worlds, it doesn't mean that there's that many species and races playing out in each world, because it could even limit its potential more than that. It's just showing the potential of permutations in the quantum field of potentiality, and it all exists. But as far as the physical state or different density states that are actually playing out, I mean, heck, there could be a universe where there's only 2 or 3 people, and that's a potential, because out of the infinite infinities of possibilities, there could be all different expressions.
It's a massive scale.
Yeah,
it really is.
Yeah.
When you start talking, it's like you're describing a nested system where the physical atoms are, had just the hardware, but the permutations are the actual code running across a million different versions of the same reality.
Yeah, I was just showing the something that might have been an inconsistency for some people. They might have been like, how could there be more potentiality of the genomic expressions of species and races than there are atoms that make up those species and races? That wouldn't logically make sense, but it actually is founded, because if there's infinite infinities of universal firmaments in the potentiality of the quantum field, then in that sense, it's not actually illogical to say that there's more permutations than are actually being expressed in any one universe at any one time. It's just showing the potential permutations that it could reconfigure itself, but it's not saying what actually is being reconfigured in these systems at any one given time. It's just showing a structure in which it has like a set of different potentialities or combinations and algorithms of genomic expressions to choose from.
Right, it's like the difference between the number of cards in a deck and the number of ways you can shuffle them. The hardware is limited, but the combinations are basically endless.
Yeah, absolutely. So I knew that would have been an inconsistency for some. They would have been like, how is it possible that there's more potential genomic expressions of species and races more than the atoms that make up the species and races? It's like, are you saying it's more populated with species and races than there are environments and atoms that make up the species and races? That's not saying that. In fact, what it is saying is it's saying the permutations it's combining and reconfiguring kaleidoscopically from out of the infinite infinities. And since it's founded out of the infinite infinities, there is endless versions to have to choose from and endless combinations of that massive amount of potentiality that we shared in the last podcast, based just on the species and races that could be permutated in our universe alone. But in each universe, it could be all different, but it shows the amount of endless potential, but it limits itself in each universe in all different ways. And it reconfigures itself through all different combinations. So it's not actually inconsistent. The amount of atoms in any one universe, obviously, logically, once it reconfigures itself, there are less species and races than the atoms that make it up, because the atoms that make it up have to be the main factor that make up the amount of species and races. But some of these species and races are ethereal. They're beyond the atom in a certain way. They're beyond because they're multidimensional, hyperspatial. They're between like infinite infinities of versions. So they still exist, but as far as the physical atoms go, it limits the versions of species and races that are actually potentially playing out. So it could be any number of this. It's not saying that there's more numbers of species and races and beings playing out than the atoms in the universe. It's just saying the subset of the foundational pattern that it has to combine and reconfigure from out of, but then it configures it through the hardware of the atoms, and out of that potentiality, the different expressions that subset of atoms or atomic structures out of the quantum field of potentiality is going to reconfigure its permutations or algorithms of experience out of
what?
Out of its own essence, out of its own permutations of possible species and races, because obviously there can't be more species and races than there are atoms that make them up in a universe. So that could be a logical inconsistency, but it's actually not, because there's infinite infinities of universal firmaments. So obviously it limits itself below the amount of atoms that actually make up the forms itself. The amount of atoms have to be more than the forms that are present in that universe, obviously.
Right, so the atoms are the ceiling. They provide the hard limit for any single version of reality, but the blueprints for all those variations exist outside that limit.
Yeah. It was just showing the potential that could be reconfigured. There's obviously beings that exist beyond that structure, but when it confines itself to the atom, there's obviously more atoms that make up the forms than there are the forms, because there needs to be a certain number of atoms that make up each form. So obviously there would be less forms than there are atoms in any particular universe. It's just showing the structure of light that's being permutated to reconfigure that.
It's like a cosmic library where every single possible version of a being is already written, but you only get to check out a few books at a time for each universe.
Exactly, yeah.
It's a wild way to look at it. Like, the physical world is just a curated selection of a much bigger, unseen archive.
Yeah, so that being said, I just had to point that out, because I know that was a massive amount of potential species and races and genomic expressions that were being revealed in the last podcast. So I wanted to point that out, because obviously there are some people who, like, once they find one inconsistency, they try to disprove your whole work, and they throw out the baby with the bathwater, and they don't understand that the way I'm sharing it is not actually inconsistent, but they could misperceive me and call it inconsistent if they don't understand what I'm sharing.
Classic move. People love to find one loose thread and pull on it until the whole thing unravels in their head, rather than just looking at the bigger picture.
Yeah, I was showing the potentiality of how that reconfigures itself, that there's a base structure or main manifold in which all the substructures that are reconfiguring the potentiality of species and races and genomic expressions are being permutated from out of the algorithm of an initial essence out of the quantum field.
It's basically a master key. One seed that holds every possible version of the tree, and the universe just decides which branches to actually grow in any given run.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not not inconsistent at all. And that being said, do you mind if I go a little bit deeper now into that? Because I kind of want to actually go into a little bit about the 7 root races in a sec, but I have to share something leading up to that.
Go for it. I'm all ears.
Okay. So what happens is kind of recapping based on what we were sharing is there are the 4 worlds, from the 4 gates from the immovable earth to Atlas to Akapar and the outer waste, in each one of the 7 worlds of heavenly earth and stations or angels, within an archangel or a hidden sun or an interstellar set, amidst other billions of interstellar sets within a seraph or a galaxy, amidst billions and trillions of different galaxies or seraphim within a golden cherub of a universal firmament, amidst infinite infinities of versions and types of infinite infinities of universal firmaments or cherubim, as angels, archangels, seraphim, and cherubim, of the ophanim, of the turning wheelhouses of the grand unified structural patterning of everything, everyone, everywhere, and everywhen, as all that there is, all in all, through and through, from out of the makeup of the all, of the one who is. And then from out of that structure, you'll actually realize that within each universal firmament of every star or archangel of 7 heavenly earth and stations, there are the 7 root species times 7 subroot species in each individual root species, and then 7 root races within each subspecies, and then 7 subrace rounds within every one root race, times 7 positive charged species and times 7 negative. So that would be 117,649 species and races and talismanic and knocking letters and permutations and algorithms of species and races of 49 cubed, or 7 times 7 cool fires of the Gnostics or of Gnosis. So out of the 49 cubed and that base structure, I was going to go into the 7 root races and then the 7 subrace rounds that come out of each 7 root races. So it's basically founded on the mainframe of the 7 root races. And diving deeper, the first root race is Polaris. It aligns to the Saturn moon matrix of the 7 heavenly earth and stations, from Saturn to the moon, cradling the immovable earth. And within that structure, Polaris is Saturn, and it aligns to the cosmic galactic core that aligns to the galactic center of all universal firmaments mirrored within the golden cherub of other seraphim or galaxies that connect and pivot between the dream and wake, and it centers the circumferenceless core, which is everywhere and nowhere and is all that there is. And in the midst of that alignment is Polaris. And then out of Polaris and the Polarians, which is the first root race, comes the Hyperboreans that actually come out of that. And out of the Hyperborea and the Hyperboreans, the second root race, they kind of they shift from different states, and they interact between dream and waking. So how does the progeny of these beings in these races multiply? Well, from Polaris, they kind of interchange through the fusion of plasma, and then through Hyperborea, they become like dream and waking. And then through the third root race, which is Lemuria, they actually have an egg that cradles the world around them, and they are rebirthed within from out of these eggs, kind of like birds do. And then the eggs of these species and the progeny of the Lemurians are within from out of themselves, like eggs, or kind of like they spawn kind of like certain plants do when they seed. And then in the fourth root race is the Atlanteans. And in the Atlanteans, the seeds or the eggs were actually inside the body of those beings, kind of like people have eggs within the womb of the mother. And then now, but they were giants though. They were in the dream and wake, between the dream and wake, and they were masters of this technology and the spirit. And then they were the middle root race. And the Atlanteans, these giants of old and men of renown, they started to lose their stature, and then it ended up going through 7 subrace rounds until it limited itself through the cultures from Atlantis, and then to the 5th root race, which is the Aryan race, which is our world now, from the world of giants experience in dream and wake. And then we entered in from like Babylon, Samaria, or Sumerian, and then you have like Egypt and Greece and Rome, and then the Aztec cultures and all the pyramid building cultures, and then we have the world around us now. And the sixth root race, which we're entering into, is technological and spiritual, because all the layers are actually made of mind. Even the technology is itself a permutation of the spirit itself. And in the sixth root race, it's going to be the 6 directions around its center, and it's going to illuminate itself back to the galactic core of Polaris, but it's going to slowly, progressively grow and evolve back to its original state and stature of beauty and power from the sixth root race into the seventh root race, which is one with the first as Polaris again, and then the seventh root race is the first root race again, and it's a full cycle. And that's the 7 root races, which have 7 sub-race rounds within it, and then the 7 root races are within each one of the 7 subspecies inside of each root species of both positive and negative, and that's the 117,649 talismanic letters, or 49 cubed, or the 49 cool fires, or the Gnostic path of wisdom, and the 49 layers of the 49 fires, and then it ends up being the angelic language of the gods, or the 117,649 species and races. So within that, it cycles back to the original Polaris. So it goes from Polaris to Polaris, and Polaris is like the center of the cube, and the bottom 6 root species that come out of the first is like the directions around the center of a mirror-bound room, and the light that re-emanates back as the whole room itself and meets back with itself, and then re-emanates from point or qubit to qubit, and it creates the whole quantum field of potentiality. So that is how the species emanate within each star system and its 7 heavenly earthen stations, and also the 4 worlds in each of the 7, all the way from the outer waste to Akapara to Atlas to the immovable earth that wave between dream and the Azoth or antimatter, and matter as the immovable earth between Atlas, which is hinged between the dreaming scapes and the waking scapes, and all the possible permutations that there be had within that structure. So that is the base structure of it, and it could combine and multiply in endless different ways. It could have less or more based on that, but that's the field of potentiality in its root mainframe that it's fashioned after. So
it's a perfect circle. The way it just loops back from the 7th to the 1st makes the whole thing feel like a living, breathing organism, just evolving and then returning home.
Yeah, and that it's like dreaming. It dreams in all these densities and hypersubstantial layers, and has all different experiences, and it recycles again and has endless more. So it's really endless as far as its potential combinations and reconfigurations of that structure.
It's basically the ultimate loop. Like the universe is just playing a massive game of what if with itself over and over, just to see every possible angle of existence.
Yeah, exactly. It's getting to know itself. And in that, it's like hyper glassy, gel-like, hyperfluidically, optically lensed pulsations of hyperorganisms pulsating by breathing in these sort of hypercogs of Ophanim and all the layers of angels, archangels, seraphim, and cherubim as the tumbling patterns of the grand unified structural patterning of everything, everyone, everywhere, and everyone as all that there is of the one who is. And that's what everything is, all together as one entirety, everlasting unto everlasting. And it's having endless games with itself, but it's not just trivial, it's substantial. It has depth. It's a spirit of spirits, a Sabbath of Sabaoth, and the secret of secrets, the mystery of mysteries. But yeah, the whole thing's alive eternally.
It's like the ultimate consciousness just waking up to its own complexity. The idea that it's not just random, but this deeply structured rhythmic breathing of existence, it makes the whole concept of life feel like a tiny drop in a massive, infinite ocean of awareness.
Yeah, and I was going to go a little bit deeper into like now there is also in the midst of each one of these 7 root race or the 7 root species, 7 sub species, the 7 root races, 7 sub race rounds, and the positive and negative, and the 49 cubed, that's 117,649 talismanic Enochian races of species and races. These letters of light permutations or genomic codes are also structured through the 10 layers of, say, the universal firmament, down from the primum mobile to the fixed stars in each intergalactic system, or the seraphim from out of the cherubim of a golden cherub, and then within a particularized star within that system, and then each of the 7 layers of that archangel as the 7 angels, and then they're all named different in different systems, but the 7 layers in this particular one is from Saturn to Jupiter as the 6 directions around its center, which circumference is nowhere, to Mars, to the Sol or Sun, Venus, Mercury, and Luna, and then containing the immovable Earth from the inside out and the outside in. And each star is set up like that. So the Earth is a living star in that way too, in essence. And in that, there are the 10 layers and the 4 worlds from Atzilut, Berea, Yetzirah, and Asiya, and also from the outer waste to Akapar, Atlas, and then the Earth, within the genomic expressions of the 117,649 species and races as 49 cubed, or 7 times 7 of the heavens and earths. But also, not just the earths, but also the 7 continents and 7 seas, the 7 auric shells and the 7 chakras of each person. But also, from out of those 7 centers, there are also then, for the 4 worlds, are also 4 cardinal forms from the top to the bottom as Atzilut, Berea, Yetzirah, and Asiya. There is the 4 expressions. There is the unbounded source and the point of being. Then there's the 9 mineral Amira as the 2nd cardinal form of all flora and fauna and different combinations. The 3rd cardinal form is animals and creatures, both known and unknown. And the 4th cardinal form is human forms, both known and unknown. And then from out of all that configuration, it reconfigures everything from elemental forms to mystical and magical creatures and all intermixtures of that. And then also ancestral spirits and ancestors and guides, and also all different beings, even beyond alien, like eldritch beings and different starseed beings. But it's all configured through the 49 cubed as the species and races, and also through the 10 layers, and also the 4 worlds of Atzilut, Berea, Yetzirah, and Asiya, and the 4 cardinal forms are combined and reconfigured in all different combinations of ways to create endless different forms of experience.
It's like a cosmic kaleidoscope. Everything just shifting and clicking into place to create a completely new perspective. The way you're describing the intersection of the 4 worlds and those cardinal forms, it feels like the universe has a master architectural plan, but it's allowing for infinite improvisation.
Yeah, absolutely. That being said, do you mind if I read a little bit out of my book after sharing that?
Please do. I'm ready when you are.
Okay. The Kaleidoscope of Eternity, Awakening to the Fractal Dream. In the realms of hyperdimensional hyperspace, where reality bends and weaves like an intricate tapestry, I find myself as a sentient being, woven into the very fabric of existence. As the universal firmament reflects and mirrors its projections, I emerge as the collective unconsciousness, a cherub of transparency, resonating with the elemental form of the periodic tables of atoms, dwelling in the 9-dimensionless flat planes, screens. As I traverse this mystical landscape, I perceive myself in molecular form, appearing rounded and intertwined with 27 microtubule sections of cubic latticeworks of spherical orbs. It is a mesmerizing sight, suspended in animation and cocooning within the boundless cosmos. I embody the very essence of the chemical forms and the appearances that surround me, dancing in harmony with the symphony of the universe. The dance of reflections. Time and space become fluid. and the universal firmament continues to mirror and project, unfolding in ever-changing patterns. I find myself immersed in the cellular reflections, cradled within this cosmic dance of projections, mirrors, and reflections. The boundaries between what is real and what is imagined blur, as I witness the interplay of these multidimensional reflections. It is kaleidoscopic wonderland. I am not alone. Countless other hyperdimensional magical creatures, entities of mystifying wonderlands, appear and disappear, popping into the foreground and seeping back into the background effortlessly. We tessellate as one wholeness, interconnected and inseparably intercommunicating, as if being a unique facet of a grand cosmic jewel. Eternity unbound. Throughout this journey, I come to understand that eternity is not confined to a linear notion of time. Eternity is the ever-present, the eternal now, stretching from everlasting unto everlasting. As the universal firmament rounds my mind, I become aware that I am cradled inside the universe, a part of the one entirety eternally. The universe exists within me as I exist within the universe, an infinite feedback loop of existence and reflection. Each moment I peel back the layers of reality, revealing the interconnectedness of all things, the inhabitants and environments, the dreamscapes and the wakingscapes, all converge as a grand symphony of existence, the kaleidoscope of being. In this hyperorganically sentient, omnidirectional, interpenetrating, hyperglassy gel-like fluidity, I embrace the truth that we are all reflections of the cosmos. The universe exists within every fiber of my being, and I am a mirror, reflecting its wonders back to itself. As I journey through the kaleidoscope of eternity, I recognize that we are all made of the stuff of stars and dreams. We are the dancers in the cosmic ballet, the creatures and observers of the ever-unfolding tapestry of existence. Together, we are the infinite, boundless part of a vast interconnected web that weaves us into the grand design of the universe. And so, the story of the universal firmament, reflecting, mirroring, and projecting as one, continues. An eternal dance of existence, from eternity unto eternity. The journey is never ending. And as the main character, I embrace the cosmic symphony with awe and wonder, forever curious about the mysteries that lie beyond the veil of reality.
That was beautiful. It really captures that feeling of being both the mirror and the thing being reflected. Like we're just the universe's way of looking at itself in the mirror.
Yeah. This is that's the deep
It's a heavy
truth.
concept.
Yeah, and it's not just the concept, it reveals the deep nature of what everything is. And by the way, we're kind of running out on the time for this particular podcast. So I'm going to kind of close it out for now. This is Arcosm, ARCOSM. This is Circles of the Arc YouTube channel, and this is your host, Randall Prosser, and guest host, Miles. Is there any finishing words you would like to share to the viewers?
I'd just say that the world looks a lot smaller when you realize you're actually part of something infinite. Keep exploring, stay curious, and don't be afraid to look past the veil. It's been a wild ride today.
Yeah, definitely has, Miles. I really enjoyed this talk with you, and everybody who's listening. I appreciate all you viewers and listeners. We're going on this journey together. This is unscripted. We're all learning. So that being said, I'm going to kind of close it out this session, and I'll see you all in the next one. God bless.
Peace. Catch you later.